Sorry, I don't drink all these 3-year aged whiskeys. I'm
It doesn't mean it's sitting there for 18 years, okay?
Can I answer? I know the answer. Single distillery.
That I knew, but I didn't say it.
A lot of people just drink to get drunk. A lot of times, like, it's just before you're going to a club, before you're going to a concert, if you're going for an event. When I'm doing something, I like to be well informed about it.
How does one, start their journey in discovering good spirit?
Basically,
You do also vintage car restoration. It's such a unique thing. Is there a car that you recently done which is like a iconic one or something that you really enjoyed restoring?
I worked on a 1938. It's called the Dodge Brothers 6. I think there are only 2 or 3 cars in the country.
I can see a lot of passion, in both of you when it comes to whiskey and, bonding of whiskey. So has this passion ever collided between the cars and the whiskey?
I keep my barroom lock and key.
Would you like to tell us a little bit about your bar? Because I've heard it's a very themed one at home.
I like to call it a caro bar.
Caro. Very Delhi talk.
How do you drink a good whiskey?
On the rocks without dilution.
And you?
I would say with very little bit of room temperature water.
So, the actual way to drink whiskey.
Mr. Sudhir Natarajan, he's from Chennai, an amazing automobile entrepreneur, been there, the second generation, has been in the business for last 45 years. He's also part of different wine clubs and I'm so thrilled to be interviewing him today. Natarajan, thank you so much for coming in for the podcast with me. And Dave, obviously, I know a lot about you, being a dear friend, and you've been into the fundraising as one of the youngest fundraising person that I came across in such a long time. Very kudos to the good work you've been also doing in the digital space. Thank you so much for taking out time for this podcast.
So happy to be here.
I was talking to Dave, that how your journey has been so interesting, in terms of you've been into the automobile, you're the second generation in the family taking the whole thing ahead when it comes to automobile. And you do also vintage car restoration. It's such a unique thing. I do not know anyone who does that. How did your journey start?
The first thing is, what was my first toy? My first toy was a wheel sack.
Oh, okay.
That was my first toy. And I used to, apparently my parents used to say, I used to walk around with the wheel styler all over the place. And that's how my life started.
Okay.
In the love for cars.
Okay.
Yeah. Always loved repairing cars. Very passionate about that. And my late father had started this garage. We're about 60 plus year old company.
Wow.
So for me, I'm in the 45th year being with repairing cars.
Wow.
Yeah. And of course, we used to do all types of cars because I went to Germany and then US and then came back to India. Enjoyed my father's business because he shut the shop down when I was in America.
Oh.
I wasn't too happy about it. And came back and restarted the whole business.
Nice.
And yeah, we built a kind of a reputation for ourselves. And
Yeah.
our motto is not your usual mechanic. That's my punchline.
Of course, when it comes to vintage cars and the kind of work you've been doing, it's not the usual mechanics and the kind of work that you see. But you came back from Germany, you were in US, you studied there. Were you studying there?
I studied gear and I did specialization in aerodynamics in automobiles of the IIT Nepal.
Wow.
So when I came back, it was like I was doing all the industry cars and consulate cars. That time was a new generation. And yeah, I built a good reputation, doing good quality work. Actually, vintage car restorations started only about 5 years ago, 5, 6 years. A client of mine who's very close to me, who owns one of India's largest collections of cars. I was telling him I want to hang my boots. And he got very upset with me and he said, what do you mean hang your boots? We are going to give you so much work, you're not going to take up the time. So that's where the journey began because Technically speaking, I think we are about 5-6 of us in India who do business.
When it comes to alcohol and the whole thing about discovering good spirits, when did your journey start there?
I think my journey started in the 80s with the consulate's cars coming to me. So I was invited to a lot of consulates, dinners, and evenings, receptions. So that's where the fine spirit and responsible drinking started. Yeah.
How does one start their journey in discovering good spirits?
So basically, it's the friends you keep.
I
Right?
can definitely
Now you know why
say.
she's friends with me.
Yeah, it's a friends
So
you
about
keep.
she stole my line.
Yeah, because to begin with, if you take wine, early in the day, it was very difficult to get good wine in India.
Yeah.
So, and when you enter India, when you travel overseas, you're permitted 2 liters.
Yeah.
And if you get 2 liters of wine, you'll finish it in 2 evenings. If you get 2 liters of whiskey, it can go on for 6 months also.
6 months also. That's true. The priorities.
Yeah. So wine was becoming more difficult. And now in India, open market, so many more international brands available across the shelf, and Indian brands coming up so well. I mean, it's fantastic wines you get.
That's
now.
true. That's true. Today, I'm so happy that both of you took out time, to be part of this. It's like two different generations in one frame, father and son, and, talking about their passion areas. And that's what I think my motto has also been, to understand the journey behind, what motivates people, and that's how this whole thing has been. So, Dave, were you never inclined to be part of the family business?
So from an interest perspective, very much so. Like, again, because I've been brought up knowing so much about cars, about the details of them, different aspects of them. How do you look for beauty in a car? How do you know whether a car is functioning well or not? Definitely a very strong interest. But I think to do as well as my dad in an industry like that, you have to be super passionate. You have to live and breathe what you do, like how he does, and you have to completely love what you do. It shouldn't feel like work. I think that's where it was missing a little bit for me. While I was highly interested, it was more of as a hobby or as a different subject.
Sure.
But I wasn't very passionate about it. I didn't focus that much on the details. If you ask me what a carburetor does till now, I wouldn't like. I know what a carburetor is, but I don't know what it exactly does in a car.
A lot of things you don't know till you get your hands into the craft.
Exactly. And my favorite activity used to still and is still like 2 days to just go to dad's garage, see all the beautiful, magnificent cars over there, like all the vintage pieces, all the new premium luxury pieces. Like, it's gorgeous. But if he asks me, which he has multiple times, to get my hands dirty into those cars, that's where like I get lost a little bit. So I think that was a little missing, and I luckily did manage to find my passion and like managed to know what my passion was,
Sure.
which is in financial awareness and in fundraising. So I sort of diverted into that field.
Nice.
I'm sure my dad's still not too happy.
So Dave, I want to ask you here, because definitely you have a great taste in discovering good spirits, and that's one of the places we bonded as friends, talking about different spirits, and because I run this channel. But how do you see this in your age group? How do these people, like your friends, also be so intrigued and curious about different spirits?
So, firstly, I don't think it's very common in my age group. A lot of misconception is that a lot of people just drink to get drunk. A lot of times, like, it's just before you're going to a club, before you're going to a concert, if you're going for an event.
And nothing wrong about it. It's
I mean, of
fine.
course,
Yeah.
to each their own perception. But I think again, where it's lacking a little bit is knowing the culture behind where it comes. So I'm, at least when I'm speaking for myself, when I'm doing something, I like to be well informed about it. I like to be well researched about it as well. And that is one factor. Another is that I was brought up by my dad. So he transferred a lot of that knowledge to me. How to define whether a wine is well aged, whether it needs to be aerated, sorry, not aerated, whether it needs to be ventilated or not,
Yeah.
how to define whether, how long you need the wine to breathe, how long you need to let it out. So a lot of that knowledge was transferred to me. So naturally, when I was like at a legal drinking age, at that moment itself, my curiosity peaked. So from there forward, I started doing my own research. I started understanding where do you get specific types of wine? Like if you get the definition of what is the difference between a champagne and a sparkling wine, what is the difference between an Irish whiskey and an American whiskey. A lot of that research came from my end because I feel like our generation is also very research oriented. Like we like searching about anything we're interested in. So from there, that interest being inculcated to my dad and then being amplified through my research is where I found it to be most interesting. And since then, it's just been an upward trajectory. I started knowing more about better whiskeys, knowing more about better wines. I go with my dad for a lot of the wine tastings as well, not because I get to try 14 different kinds of wine.
You
But
come
the
out drunk.
Those are like byproducts of going for a taste. You know, here's where I really like to appreciate you, sir, because a lot of people in India think it's disrespectful to drink with your family together. But having said that, there are different cultural norms that different people follow, and you know, to each is his own, as they've also said. But you know, when you're able to enhance that culture in your house, you get a little more openness. Do you feel that? Do you feel
So,
there is more responsibility?
You having brought this point up and Dave telling us this, that my elder son and him, their first drink was with me. And I made sure that they had their first drink with me. So I popped a bottle of champagne and we had it together, four of us. Not him, not with my elder son, not him, but when he was legal age, then with four of us. Yeah. So that's how I don't create a barrier for them. Then we can be more friends. Then, you know, most of the kids hide behind the parents and drink. And so because they want to drink a lot before they get home, they get drunk.
I would say the whole openness goes away, and the right way of appreciating a good whiskey or a good spirit, you know, dies down because you're hiding it. It feels like you're doing something wrong, you know, which is not the right way to do it.
I think that made the biggest difference also for me, because I still remember the exact words also you told me when we were having our first drink, or even before we had our first drink, was that if you feel like you want to have a drink or try alcohol, I don't want you to go outside and try it. I'd rather not you go to some random shady bar or some club and just get drunk over there. If you actually feel like doing it, do it in the house. Learn how to do it the right way first. And then if you want to go show the outside world or do it in the outside world is an entirely different thing, which I leave upon you. But like keep it in the house first so that I can tell you the right way and the wrong way. I think that made all the difference, because then I got to learn when I was like younger itself, that what is the right amount to drink, how to know to stay within your limits, or to know when to call it quits, to know what you're drinking is good or bad. It gave me a lot of understanding in the right age itself, which gives you direction in a certain essence. Like randomly, if I leave you in the middle of the forest and ask you to escape, it's going to take you a long time. You're going to get lost,
It's
whatever.
like not having the training for it.
Exactly.
When you started with it, what were the few challenges you saw in the vintage car industry in India today? You know,
So the challenges are to source parts,
yeah,
to bring it to the right shape as what it used to be
sure,
When it was manufactured.
yeah,
And then make it
almost a daily runner. Because these cars were daily runners.
yeah,
And now it is only for shows. It goes for show.
yeah,
So, but we had to bring it to that shape.
yeah.
And if you are satisfied with what we can produce, then it's good. To get the spares,
Yeah, that's a big challenge.
it is a challenge.
And what about the clients? Are they always having realistic expectations from you when it comes to restoration?
Luckily for me, my clients have blind trust in what we do.
Amazing.
Yeah, they just say, we leave it to you, you get it to what way. So when they do that, when they give you that responsibility, then automatically you get more passionate. You want to do better.
Yeah.
You want to get at a level which is much higher than what your own standards can set.
That's true.
Is there a car that you recently done which is like a iconic one or something that you really enjoyed restoring?
Yeah. I worked on a 1938, I think, 1938. It's called the Dodge Brothers 6.
Okay.
I think there are only 2 or 3 cars in the country. In this car, it came from a client of mine who got it, which was previously owned by Lord Mountbatten.
Oh.
Free in the packets. Yeah, so the car itself is about 100 years old.
Oh my God. A lot of pressure also.
Does the car still run?
Yeah.
It still drives.
Now it drives.
Yeah.
We entered it on the show in January. Lot of appreciation. Lot of people went. It's very gaga over the car.
I think what you do also is, it's like considered as a professional career. Like how you have doctors, lawyers, and also there you have a lot of blind faith, right? You tell them, okay, please manage it, because I don't have that technical knowledge to manage it. So something.
Answer that. When I meet a doctor, I tell them I'm also a doctor. They say, oh, you feel. I said, doctor Madira.
When it comes to someone as young as you know, if they have to put their heads into restoration or buying a car because it's unique and all your generation wants is everything unique, something which stands out. What are your takes on that? You
No,
know?
I mean, nowadays, if you see, I mean, especially in Bombay also, every 26, 27-year-old is driving like a BMW or a Mercedes. So
Yeah.
I feel like somewhere that charm is being lost and all. And I mean, ideally, if I see someone my age driving a vintage car, I'd be more impressed than any other fancy premium luxury car that they're driving, because more than anything, it shows character. It shows that there's more depth to it than just like a statement that, okay, I own like a rich car or a fancy car. It shows that you actually care about the culture of where it comes from, the history, the background, who owned it before. And one thing I really like that my dad does is, not that a lot of these vintage car restorations is, they change how the car looks, they change how it drives a little bit. But what my dad does is, he makes the car exactly the way it was.
Wow.
And I think that's very rare to find. Like,
Yeah, that's important also, because otherwise it's like then remodeling the whole thing and it loses its essence.
Correct.
That's true.
so I think that stands out more as a statement. Even for someone my age, driving a car like that is, I think, much hotter compared to a new age fancy luxury car which goes on there.
That's interesting. If today a person like me who's not very savvy about automobiles, women generally tend to goof up a bit about when it comes to automobiles. How can one go about, how can one, start their journey?
First, learn how to take care of your car.
Yeah, I agree.
If you buy good clothes, you know how to keep it right.
Yeah.
And you know how to mend it. If a button breaks, you know how to stitch it or where it improves on me. Same ways, the car, first thing, know basics.
For sure. Yeah.
Okay. And then get yourself into the next. I remember even, and a beautiful lady should always drive a nice Volkswagen B2.
Oh yeah, that's always with it, that wish list.
Because everybody's dream is to own a Beetle.
Beetle, yeah, and that comes with a lot of. But again, when it comes to owning a vintage car, like you said, you should know the nuances of how to take care of it. So, what are a few things somebody also in that space should do? Like
Keep the car well taken care.
Sure.
If you have something very precious, what would you do? You would leave it in the living room just hanging around, or you would put it in a safe place, keep it well,
Yeah.
keep it polished and intellect. Same thing with the car.
I can see a lot of passion, in both of you when it comes to whiskey and, bonding over whiskey. So, has this passion ever collided between the cars and the whiskies, and has it ever collided or can collide in the future?
I keep my barroom lock and key. The key travels with me when I'm not at home.
Same with the cars. The same way.
Cars, though, I can't.
But would you like to tell us a little bit about your bar? Because I've heard it's a very themed one at home.
It's I like to call it a karobar.
Karo. Very Delhi term.
It's I put up some speedometers. My music system is what I made in college. It's a car music system,
Oh.
which I put it in mud cars, in
Okay.
pots, and
Wow.
with water levels to give you that effect. And a lot of car posters.
Wow.
I think you're being a little modest. The entire bar is themed in the fashion of a vintage car. Like when you walk in, you feel like you're just transported to another place in terms of coziness, comfort, and
That's thanks to your mother.
yeah.
My wife, I give all the credit to her for doing up the bar like that for me.
Interesting.
And she bought a beautiful board which says Sudhir's Bar, open 24/7.
Now with India being taking up the ranks when it comes to whiskey, you know, a lot of people used to think Scottish whiskey aged for 3 to 7 years, blah blah blah, is the best one to have. But all our Indian whiskies are now topping. So, do you feel there is a difference when it comes to Indian whiskies and the Scottish?
Okay, here's a very interesting story I must share with you. So there's this friend of mine who was the consul general of a country, and one evening he said, Sudhir, tell me which scotch is this. So he poured me a drink and I tasted it and I rattled all the names that I knew from all the Glen families and everything. He said, no. And then he smiled and took out the bottle and kept it on the table. He said, have you had this before? I looked at it and I said, Amrut, where's this from? He said, India, Bangalore based. I was like, wow. You know, that was the first break. And that way it opened my eyes that India is making fantastic whiskies. You know, when I travel overseas, when I'm going to visit friends, you know what I take them?
What?
I take them Old Monk rum.
Wow. Okay.
Because that's something they don't get there.
You remember when we went for a French woman's farewell also at once? Their biggest want for that farewell when they had their wish list was Amrut. Was that 18-year-old Amrut. So I think a lot of recognition has been coming towards Indian brands recently.
So I'm going to ask you, I'm going to put you in a little bit of a spot. What are the 3 whiskies that Uncle likes a lot, you know?
I have to guess for him.
Yeah, you have to guess for him.
Definitely not Black Label. It's a difficult question. I would say Lafroy is one of them. Or Glenfiddich 16 and a Macallan 16.
Yeah. So
Wow, all 3 right. Not
No,
bad.
no, I don't think so. All 3 are
I think Glenfiddich 18.
18.
Yeah. Macallan, any Macallan is good.
Yeah.
Anything above 12.
Okay.
And Lafroy at times when I feel like a
But what is the actual answer? What are the top 3?
I have a big list. So when
But
I
if
see
you
the
have to pick
bottles,
top
when I
one.
see the bottles, then I can select.
Okay.
Then of course, if I go to an alcohol store, I know exactly which one to buy you from where.
What is your favorite? From which other country apart from India would you feel that you one
If you have to
must
choose from Irish, American,
Yeah.
and single malt.
Single malt, Scottish. Scotland. Yeah, Scottish. I'm a all-time fan of Glenfiddich, 18.
I think your generation has always had that love for Glenfiddich for some reason.
I
I think it's an
maybe it's just been growing with us.
Why my favorite's also Glenfiddich.
Yeah, I don't consider you having the taste that your age group people have. But
Yeah.
if I had to ask you, you know, which are your favorites?
No, I want my dad to guess. What do you think are my 3 favorites?
Yeah, if you can guess.
Jägermeister.
No. I don't like Jaeger. I'm forced to drink it from time to time.
He told me that might come up, but on a serious note, if he has to enjoy one whiskey with you, you know, which one would that be?
I think he'll leave the choice to me.
100%. Without question.
If I'm having a 18, he'll say, okay, I'll have that. With this Macallan.
That's the advantage. I don't have to choose, think, nothing. Whatever my dad's having, just plus 1.
It's B plus 3.
Yeah, that's true. But otherwise, which one do you think is my favorite?
Macallan.
I would say Macallan. It's a tough one between Macallan and Oban for me. But
Artberg is also good.
yeah, and, it's a bit too smoky for my taste. Artberg, no? It's a little like, I don't know. I think the flavor is a bit too strong for me. But Macallan, yeah, in a heartbeat.
Wow. A lot of knowledge on whiskey, and I think I can go on for hours and hours. The topic is never ending for me.
But whiskey,
Yeah.
I like to finish with one point.
What?
How do you drink a good whiskey?
With on the rocks without dilution?
And you?
I would say with very little bit of room temperature water.
So the actual way to drink whiskey is after dinner.
Okay. After dinner. With having your stomach full?
Full.
Okay.
And you take a small shot. In a cold weather, you don't need to add anything.
Oh, okay.
You can sip your drink and nurse it.
Okay.
The other way, in a hot temperature, humid place, you can drop a cube of ice and just a pipette of water.
Okay.
Like a straw, dip it in water and drop it there.
Oh,
It breaks the whiskey. So that's the right way to drink it.
wow. Interesting. Very
And
interesting.
a lot of my knowledge of whiskey is just very scientific related also. Like if you'd ask me what is the cost of, as in why is there a difference between costs in whiskeys, I can tell you the different scientific reasons also of why a more higher aged whiskey costs more. Also because of something called an angel tax, which is the whiskey vaporizing itself out of the barrels.
Yeah.
And also, like, I can also just go on and on.
But
and
yeah,
hours
that's true.
about it.
That's true. I've heard about the angel tax and you know how people tend to pay a premium because it's aged for a very long time.
And the fact that whiskeys get their flavors from the barrels, as in that certain whiskeys are made in oak barrels, which gives it its entire flavor. The darker the whiskey, the more aged it is because it gets the color from the barrel. I'm just a fun fact. Like that's what I enjoy about like drinking a whiskey also, is about knowing these small nuances about it, which gives it a lot more depth. You're not just drinking an alcohol.
Yeah.
You're drinking something which has a story to it.
to tell. And that's why coming to the wine club, you know, because you spoke about, you know, the wine, being part of the wine club as well. And how do you see the wine culture in last 10 years evolving in India? And, you know, do you think it's...
Leaps and bounds, it's just gone ahead.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's amazing to attend one of these wine evenings where you get French wines, Italian wines, Australian wines. All of them come and showcase the quality, different types of wines.
Wow.
And it all depends on the region the wine comes from. What is the grape they use. And it's a good experience to go through that. In the last 10 years, you can see more and more the shops have different types of wines in India, which you find it difficult to select which one to buy.
Which one to buy? That's the biggest challenge these
Yes.
days, you know. How does one select a good wine, you know, again?
So, it all depends. If you take Indian wines, if you take the Sula wine, or the Zappa, or the Fratelli, they're brilliant, really brilliant wines.
Yeah,
But they also pair with our Indian food.
that's true. That's true.
You need to take a wine that pairs with our food.
That's true.
And wine is something that you should drink with your meal.
I think even in my generation also the concept of a private table dinner with the exact wine pairing which goes with it is really up and coming. Like people are willing to pay that extra premium to have that luxurious experience.
You can do
which
it at
gives them-
home as well.
Yeah.
Of course, yeah.
Yeah, but when it comes to sit-down dinners, even I have been part of few, luckily, I realized that a lot of interesting food pairing habits you get to understand there.
Yeah.
And you rightly said that a lot of wines the wines don't go with the Indian food, and that's the reason the culture has not taken off the way it should have, you know, because it's a thing you drink with your food, you know, so you need to know about it. Very interesting.
Yeah.
What is that one thing you would like to take from your dad, you know, given an opportunity? I know you've been learning a lot about...
One thing, there's like a long plethora of list over there I'd like to take away. But I think the fact, like what I'd want to do in the future generations or the future years to come, is to inculcate that sense of interest in other people, like the way he has in me. Like he created that small little spark which led to a huge fire of me being very interested in it, me trying to understand the culture behind it, etc., etc. So to understand how to properly inculcate that spark in someone else without overdoing it.
Yeah.
Like it's not about drinking a lot, it's not about partying or fun, but just to sit down, have a conversation, have that glass of wine and understand what goes behind that glass of wine is something I want to learn from him to give to another person also.
Nice. Very interesting.
You must, they say, how do you know it's a good wine?
Yeah.
So first you smell it, you look at the tear it leaves on the glass, you twirl it, and then you see how the tears are there or not there,
Yeah.
and then you smell, and then you taste.
Yeah. So it's an experience for all your five senses,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah.
That's true. That's true. And one piece of advice you would like to give to, you know, people out there when it comes to starting their journey and, you know, becoming more aware about good alcohols, you know.
Okay, before getting into good alcohol, my advice to anybody, you can afford a good premium scotch or a wine. You can also afford a driver for the evening.
That's true. That's true.
Yeah?
That's the biggest merge of alcohol and cars, I think.
Yeah. That's
You should never drive, even if you say, I've just had one drink, so what?
true. Yeah.
Never do that. That's the most important point for me. Well, when you want to move on
Yeah.
to going into good quality whiskey or wine, seek advice, join the clubs. Yeah?
That's true.
And then you get to taste good wines, and then you will know, hey, this wine was fantastic.
Yeah.
Like Zappa,
Yeah.
that's a very good wine.
Wine,
Sula,
yeah. Sula.
Fratelli, I mean, the rosés, the sparklings, the champagnes,
Yeah.
everything is so beautifully available now. And just go with it.
Let's have some fun with all the knowledge that both of you have around alcohol. I would like to test it a little bit with some trivia questions that I've made, you know, out of the internet and ChatGPT today. So, starting off with you first, what does the word single malt mean exactly?
Can I answer?
It's a story.
I know the answer.
No, it's all the barley, the wheat that comes from where it's made. And when the malt is of the same grade
Yeah.
all along, then it's a very fine single malt.
In a way, yes.
Can I give the final addition which makes it the right answer?
Yeah, please.
It comes from one distillery. From a single distillery.
That I knew, but I didn't say it.
He went into the nuances of how it's made.
Yeah.
Okay.
He thought that this was common knowledge, the rest was the one where everyone else was asking about.
This is for you, Dave. What is the minimum age requirement for a Scottish whiskey to age?
I get the difficult question.
1 year, 3 years, or 5 years?
5 minimum?
You went 2 years ahead.
3 years.
3 years.
Sorry, I don't drink all these 3-year age whiskeys.
It doesn't mean it's sitting there for 18 years. Okay?
What's the key difference between a bourbon and a Scotch?
Bourbon is more American,
Yeah.
and Scotch is from Scotland.
Yeah, that's exactly the right thing. And because it's American, it's made from corn. And
Yeah.
bourbon is, you know, that's why.
I think these questions are rigged.
Oh, come on. Where did the word whiskey now originate? You know, which was the place it actually originated?
That's a good point, because I recently got to know about this and I can't remember.
Oh,
I actually don't know. Where
Really?
it came from. No. Where
No,
it's
there
from?
was a place called
it's from Ireland, actually.
Ireland, and it
Yeah.
was a whisker or something.
Yeah.
Whisker was the name
Yeah,
of the place.
yes,
Yeah.
definitely. This is for you, sir. If you had to rate these whiskies from low to high, you know, the options being Glenlivet, Glenfiddich, or Johnny Walker Blue Label.
Difficult. I would still go with Glenfiddich, then Johnny Walker Blue Label, then Glen.
Okay, interesting.
My answer would have been the same.
This is for you, Dev. If you had to rate these Indian whiskies in the order of from being high to low, Amrut, Rampur, and Indri.
I actually haven't tried the second one. You said what?
Rampur.
Rampur? Interesting. I've never tried. But difficult to choose between Amrut and Indri because both are very nice. But I would still go Amrut first, Indri second, and because I haven't tried the second one, Rampur third.
Fair, fair.
Have you tried it? No?
No, I have. I have a bottle at home.
Is it nice?
I haven't touched.
Like a lot of the good bottles at home, it's just unopened. That's why now you know why I go back home for what he said.
Give
To
the air
christen
to
the
Number
bottle.
lock. I number lock.
I was gonna say give the air to the whiskey bottles both in the cars.
No, it's number lock.
But like how we said, no, these cars are meant to be driven. I believe these whiskies are meant to be drank also.
No, the problem is it will be finished.
Okay, the last question for you, sir. If you had to gift a friend one of these, which one would you prefer without biases? A premium single malt from any of the Indian distilleries right now, or a Sula Suntory, the premium Sula sparkling wine?
Depends on the occasion I'm going for.
Okay.
If it's a friend's house, if I'm invited as good friends, I'll take a good scotch. If it's a formal evening, there's a formal evening, I'll take a good bottle of wine.
Wow, that's
And
so.
another great way to know about is invite me and my dad for a drink. And be educated.
The drinks are already ready.
Oh, wow.
Thank you so much. It's been a very enlightening, and like you said, you know, if you can afford a good whiskey, you can definitely afford a party hard driver.
Yeah.
So definitely, that's a very, very good signing off for
Yeah.
for everyone to know about.